Madam, am I audible?
Yes, madam. Yes, I have put it for recording you, madam.
Fine. Okay. Good morning, students. Now we'll continue with our session. So in the previous session, we have completed 3 chapters: Living World, Biological Classification, and Plant Kingdom. Let us continue with the chapter Morphology of Flowering Plants, and let us have this chapter at a glance. Okay, so that you should be able to solve today's neat paper. Let us have the brief idea about this chapter, Morphology of Flowering Plants. So what is morphology? Morphology is nothing but when we talk about the external features of an organism, it is called as morphology. So in the first part of this chapter, we have studied about the root system in flowering plants. So in flowering plants, in majority of the plants, the root system is divided into two broad categories. You can add one more type, third type, but two broad categories: tap roots and fibrous roots. Okay, so what are tap roots? Tap roots are nothing but, in majority of the dicotyledonous plants, the direct elongation of the radicle leads to the formation of a primary root which will grow inside the soil. Okay, and this root bears lateral roots, okay, which are can be referred to as secondary, tertiary roots, etc. The primary roots and its branches will ultimately constitute the taproot system. I repeat, the roots which arise from the radicle and which has primary roots and its branches, which include secondary and tertiary roots, that type of root system is called as taproot system. Example under this category is dicots, and specifically can give many different example, like mustard is one example. Fibrous roots. In monocots, you find the fibrous roots wherein the primary root is short-lived and will be replaced by a large number of roots. And these roots originate from the base of the stem, and this will ultimately constitute the fibrous root system. Monocots are the examples. Wheat is a specific example under that. You can give very other examples also, but wheat is mentioned in your NCERT textbook. We have third type, that is adventitious roots. Okay, in some plants, like for example, if you take grasses, okay, monstera and even banyan tree, roots will be arising from the parts of the plant which are other than that of radicle, and these roots are called as adventitious roots. Okay, so basically we have two types. You can add the third type, that is adventitious roots also. So I repeat, tap roots are those basically one second. Yes. Tap roots are those which arise from the radicle, have branches, okay, found in monocots. Fibrous roots found in dicots. Adventitious roots found in specific plants. For example, if you take grasses, monstera, etc. Okay, and you have different examples for this categories. You can see the pictures also here. Okay, in this particular slide, taproot system diagram is depicted here. Similarly, fibrous root and adventitious roots which develop from other organs of the shoot system. Okay, so we have these three basic types. Okay, now moving ahead, what are the main functions of root? The main functions of root can be categorized into the following types. Like one of the most important function is absorption of water and minerals from the soil, providing a proper anchorage to the plant parts, storing reserve food material, and synthesis of plant growth regulators. These are the major functions of the root system. And if you just move ahead in this chapter, we have one more important thing to study, that is regions of the root. Okay, so regions regions of the root, they can be categorized into the following regions like root cap, region of meristematic activity, region of elongation, and region of maturation. Okay, so what is this root cap? The root is covered by at the apex by a thimble like structure which is called as the root cap, and its major function is protecting the tender apex. Okay, and it makes way through the soil. That is the function of the root cap. Next, we have region of meristematic activity. You can see in this particular figure, region of meristematic activity, the cells of this particular region are usually very small, thin walled cells are there, and they have dense cytoplasm or protoplasm. Okay, and these are the actively dividing cells. They divide repeatedly. Okay, then just if you move ahead proximal to this region, then there is presence of region of elongation. Okay. In region of elongation, the cells of the elongation zone gradually, ultimately, these cells are responsible for the growth of the root in length. Okay, and then these cells of the elongation zone gradually differentiate, and finally they mature to give rise to region of maturation. Okay, and this region of maturation, from this you can see some of the epidermal cells form fine, small, delicate thread-like structures which are called as root hairs, and we all know what are the functions of this root hairs. The major function is absorption. Okay, so these are the different regions of the root system. Let us move ahead and have a glance on the modification of the root system. So students, you should know that roots in many of the plants will alter their shape and structure, and they become modified to perform some different or special functions other than their normal functions. Other than absorption, conduction of water, they do some specialized functions, and these functions can be of different types. Okay, the modifications can occur for this purpose of support, storage of food, respiration, etc., etc. For example, if you take tap roots of carrot, turnip, and adventitious roots of sweet potato, they get swollen and they are designed or they are modified for storage function. Similarly, we have prop roots. Okay, prop roots which are usually found in banyan tree, as you can see the diagram here also, prop roots. Okay, and these prop roots are those roots which are responsible for support function. Okay, similarly, we have stilt roots which are usually found in certain plants like maize, sugarcane, etc. And these stilt roots are also responsible for support, because in these stilt roots, the stems of maize and sugarcane have supporting roots which come out of the lower nodes of this stem. You can see the diagram here. These roots arise from the lower nodes of this stem, and they are designed for support function. Example, as I said, maize and sugarcane. And we have one more category here, that is nothing but nematophores. Okay, so where are these nematophores present? Okay, they are found particularly in certain plants like rhizophora is the very good example, which grow in swampy areas. Okay, so some of the roots arise from the ground and they grow vertically upwards. The diagram is depicted here. You can see the roots grow upward here in a vertical fashion. Okay, and these roots are called as nematophores, and the main function of such nematophores is respiration. Okay, why respiration? Because in swampy areas and all, there is a problem of dissolution of oxygen. Okay, oxygen dissolution problem is there, so it is difficult for the roots to absorb water, so that's why they arise vertically and take up the process or function of respiration. Okay, so these are the different kinds of modification of root system in flowering plants. Now the next part in this chapter is stem. So what is stem? Stem is nothing but the ascending part of the axis which bears branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, etc. Okay, and it develops from the plumule of the embryo of a germinating seed. Stem is one that bears nodes and internodes. The region of the stem where leaves are born are called as nodes, while internodes are the portions between two successive nodes. Okay, and this stem also bears buds which may be terminal or axillary. As in case of roots, as said, similarly, now in stem also, there are some specific functions which are taken up by the stems. What are those functions? The main functions are spreading out branches bearing leaves, flowers, and fruits, conduction of water, minerals, and carrying out photosynthesis, storage of food, support, protection, and vegetative propagation. So students, these are the main functions of the stem. Okay, then As in case of roots, we have seen the modifications. Similarly, in stems also, they show different types of modification. The stem may not always be typically like what we expect. Okay, it performs multiple functions. For example, underground stems of potato, ginger, turmeric, zameen khan, colocasia, they are modified for the storage of food, and these act as organs of perennation to tide over conditions for unfavorable for growth. Okay, we have one more modification that is called as stem tendrils. Stem tendrils which arise from the axillary buds, example in gourds like cucumber, pumpkins, watermelon, grape vines. What is the function of stem tendrils? They help plants to climb. They are helping in climbing process. Similarly, we have one more modification wherein the axillary buds get modified into woody, straight and pointed thorns. Okay, example under this category is citrus and bougainvillea. Okay, citrus, bougainvillea, the main function is protecting plants from browsing animals. Okay, and one of the important adaptation or modification is some plants of arid regions, that is dry regions, modify their stems into flattened or fleshy cylindrical structure. Flattened structure you find in case of opuntia, and fleshy cylindrical structure you find in case of euphorbia. And what is this modification for, students? This modification is for taking up the process of photosynthesis, because these stems contain chlorophyll and they are designed to carry out photosynthesis. Okay, so you can see the different diagrams here of stem modification which are designed for storage. Okay, so stem modified into spines, the stem modified into tendrils as I have explained, and stem modified into different structures. Okay, so this is one of the modifications. Let us come to further modifications of this stem. In certain plants, underground stems of some plants like grasses and strawberry will undergo modification for the purpose of vegetative propagation. Okay, whereas in plants like mint and jasmine, a slender lateral branch arises from the base of the main axis, and after growing aerially for certain time, it arches downwards to touch the ground. The function is again vegetative propagation. Okay, whereas in certain plants like Pispistia and Eichhornia, a lateral branch with short internodes and each node bearing a rosette or a tuft of leaves or tuft of roots is found in aquatic plants, and that is also designed for vegetative propagation. That is what we call as offset. You all know that. Okay, and another example under this modification of stem is banana. Okay, similarly pineapple, chrysanthemum. What happens in this modification is lateral branches originate from the basal and underground portion of the main stem, grow horizontally beneath the soil, and then come out obliquely upward, giving rise to the leafy shoots. Naming like runner, sucker, stolon are not mentioned. I repeat, these terms are not mentioned, but explanations are given with examples. So even you should know the details about this. Okay, so we have just glanced the details. We have just glanced the things here. Okay, now let us move ahead. So the next part in this chapter is the leaf. Okay, so what is leaf? Leaf is generally a lateral flattened structure which is borne on the stem. Okay, and it develops at the node and bears a bud in its axil. You must remember that every leaf has a bud in its axil. Okay, and these leaves originate from the shoot apical meristem. Okay, and they are arranged in an acropetal order. I repeat my words, they arise from the shoot apical meristem and they are arranged in an acropetal order, and they are the most important structure for photosynthesis, as we all know. So a typical leaf generally has three parts, what you can see on the screen here. What are the three parts? Leaf base, petiole, and leaf blade or lamina. You can see the picture also here very clearly. Okay, so leaf base, this part is called as the leaf base, what you can see here. The petiole, which is the stalk like structure which is holding the leaf blade or the lamina. Okay, so this leaf blade basically or the leaf base, I'm sorry, leaf base is nothing but the basic part. Leaf is attached to the stem by means of leaf base. Okay, and it may bear two lateral small leaf like structures which are called as stipules. You can see in the picture here. Okay, leaf base can bear two lateral structures, two small leaf like lateral structures, and these are called as stipules. Okay, and in certain cases, in monocots, you must remember that the leaf base may get swollen, okay, or it may get particularly expanded into a sheath covering the stem partially, okay. And in certain legumes, the leaf base may become swollen particularly, and which is called as pulvinous, okay. The leaf base, when it gets swollen in leguminous plants, it is called as pulvinous here. So this is about the leaf base, okay. And petiole is one. What is this petiole? Petiole is responsible to hold the leaf blade or lamina, exposing it to the light, okay. And this allows the lamina just to move or easily flutter in the wind. Thereby it helps to cool the leaf surface and brings the cool air to the leaf surface, okay. So these are the functions. The most important part is the lamina or the leaf blade, which is the expanded part designed to carry out photosynthesis, which is supplemented with veins and veinlets here, okay. A prominent mid vein will be there here. Prominent vein, which is known as the midrib, will be present here, okay. And these veins will provide rigidity to the leaf blade, and they act as transport channels for the transport of water, minerals, etc. Okay, then moving ahead, we have venation. So what is venation, students? The arrangement of veins and veinlets in the lamina of the leaf is called as venation. You all know that there are two types of venation, okay, that is reticulate and parallel venation, okay. If you just one minute, if you just see the diagram here, what is reticulate venation, okay. When the veinlets form a network, the venation is called as reticulate venation, okay. And when the veins run parallel to each other, it is called as, within the lamina, it is called as parallel venation. When there is a network-like arrangement, it is reticulate. When they run parallel, it is called as parallel venation. Okay. So leaves with dicots in dicot plants generally have reticulate venation, and in monocots, generally they have parallel venation. Okay. Then the next part is types of leaves. So there are two major types of leaves. Okay. One is called as the simple leaf. Another one is called as the compound leaf. So what is simple and compound leaf? You should know very clearly. Leaf is said to be simple. Leaf is called simple when its lamina is entire. Okay. When its lamina is entire, and even if it is incised, the incisions do not touch the midrib. I repeat my words. What is simple leaf? Simple leaf is one in which the lamina is entire, and even if it is incised, the incisions generally do not touch the midrib. Okay. When the incisions of the lamina touch the midrib and it breaks into smaller number of leaflets, the leaf is said to be compound. Okay. So I hope you have understood simple and compound. Two types of leaves are there, and compound leaves are further divided into two types, that is pinnately compound and palmately compound. Okay. So what is pinnately compound leaf? Pinnately compound leaf, you can see the diagrams here. Okay. You can see the diagrams here. This is the simple leaf. These are the two types of compound leaf. This is pinnate. This is palmate. So what is pinnately compound leaf? In pinnately compound leaf, a number of leaflets are present on a common axis, which is called as the rachis. You can see number of leaflets present on a common rachis, okay, which is nothing but the midrib also. This type of leaf is called pinnate leaf. And in palmate leaf, the leaflets are attached at a common point. Okay, which is that common point? It is nothing but the tip of the petiole. Okay, as you see in case of silk cotton. Palmately compound example is silk cotton. Pinnately compound example is neem. Okay, so these are the different types of leaves. Now we have the next part, that is nothing but the phyllotaxy. Okay, students. So what is phyllotaxy? Phyllotaxy is nothing but the arrangement of leaves on the stem or its various branches. This phenomena, this arrangement is called as phyllotaxy. So we all know that there are three types of phyllotaxy. One is alternate, opposite, and bold phyllotaxy. Examples are cited here. Alternate phyllotaxy, example China rose, mustard, and sunflower. Okay, so you can even see the diagram here for alternate phyllotaxy, opposite phyllotaxy, as well as the bold phyllotaxy. So what is alternate phyllotaxy? In alternate type of phyllotaxy, a single leaf arises at each node in an alternate manner. Okay, a single leaf which is arising at each node in an alternate fashion. This is called as alternate. Okay, what is opposite phyllotaxy? A pair of leaves will be arising at each node. Okay, and they lie just opposite to each other. This is called opposite. What is bold phyllotaxy? In bold phyllotaxy, more than two leaves arise at a node and they form a bowl or a cluster. Okay, this is called as bold phyllotaxy, as you can see in case of Alstonia. Okay, so these are the three types of phyllotaxy. Similarly, we have modifications of leaf, students. Okay, so leaves are also modified to perform various functions. General function of the leaf is photosynthesis, but in addition to photosynthesis, they can even do other functions also. What are those functions? What are those modifications? Okay, leaf modification, one of the important types of modification is leaf tendrils. Okay, leaves will be converted into slender tendrils, and their main function is to help for climbing. Okay, example in this category is pea plant. Similarly, leaves can be modified into spines. The purpose is defense or protection. Example in this category is cactus. Okay, and one more modification is the fleshy leaves. Leaves can become fleshy. Okay, and they can be designed to store food. The main function of fleshy leaves is storage of food, as you can see in case of onion and garlic. Okay, one more modification of leaf is present or formation of phyllodes. So what is this phyllodes? Phyllodes you find in case of Australian acacia, which is a very good example for that. Okay, so what is this phyllodes? You can see the diagram here. Okay, so in phyllodes what happens? The leaves are small and the petioles in this leaf will be expanding. Okay, the petioles in these plants will expand. They become green in color. Okay, and they are designed to carry out photosynthesis. You can see the diagram here, phyllodes. Okay, so this is the a very good picture of phyllodes where the petiole is shown in an expanded form, and this is designed to carry out photosynthesis. Okay, so this is called as phyllodes in case of Australian acacia. You can add some more examples here, like leaves of certain insectivorous plants like Nepenthes, Venus flytrap also can be considered as modification designed for trapping their food or insects. Moving to the next part here, that is inflorescence. So what is inflorescence? Arrangement of flowers on the floral axis is termed as inflorescence. Depending upon whether the apex gets converted into flower or continues to grow, two major types of inflorescence are there, that is racemose and cymose inflorescence. So what is racemose? The main axis continues to grow. The flowers are borne laterally in an acropetal succession. This is called as racemose inflorescence. Similarly, what is cymose inflorescence? The main axis terminates in a flower, hence it is limited in growth, and here the flowers are born in a basipetal order. So these are the two major types of inflorescence. Proceeding ahead, we have the next part in this chapter as flower. Okay, so what is flower, students? We are very well aware of this particular term flower, which is nothing but the reproductive unit in case of angiosperms, and it is designed for sexual reproduction. A typical flower has generally four whorls which are arranged on the thalamus. Okay, and these four whorls are nothing but calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. Okay, and a flower can be bisexual or unisexual. Okay, when a flower a flower can be unisexual when it has either stamens or carpels. Okay, when it has both, it is considered as bisexual. Similarly, a flower can be trimerous, tetramerous, pentamerous, bracteate, or ebracteate. So trimerous, when do you say? When the floral appendages are multiples of 3, trimerous, multiples of 4, tetramerous, multiples of 5, pentamerous, like that we give the naming as such. Bracteate or ebracteate. Okay, when flowers with bracts with reduced leaf found at the base, okay, of the pedicel, it is called as bracteate, and those without the bracts is called as ebracteate. Okay, flowers can also be divided into different types based on their symmetry. Okay, what are the different types? Actinomorphic flower, zygomorphic, and asymmetrical flower. So what is actinomorphic flower? Okay, when a flower can be divided into two equal radial halves in any radial plane passing through the center, then it is called as actinomorphic flower. Okay, example under this category is mustard, datura, chili. And a flower, when a flower can be divided into two similar halves only in one particular vertical plane, then it is called as zygomorphic flower. That is pea, bean, gulmohar are the examples for this. Okay, and if it cannot be divided into two similar halves by any of this vertical plane passing through it, then the flower is said to be asymmetrical. Example under this category is canna. Now, based on the position of calyx, corolla, and androecium. In respect to the ovary on or respect of the ovary on the thalamus, the flowers are categorized into three basic types. Okay, so what are the three basic types? Hypogynous flower, perigynous flower, and epigynous flower. So what is hypogynous flower? In hypogynous flower, the gynoecium occupies the highest position while the other parts are situated below it, and in this case we say that the ovary is superior. Okay, in hypogynous flower, the ovary is said to be superior. Example under this category is mustard, chana rose, and brinjal. Similarly, we have perigynous flower. So what is perigynous flower? If the gynoecium is situated in the center and the other parts of the flower are located on the rim of the thalamus. Okay, when other parts where they are located on the rim of the thalamus, almost is the similar level, then the flower is said to be perigynous. Example is plum, rose, peach. Okay, lastly we have epigynous flower. So what is an epigynous flower? In this case, the margin of the thalamus grows upward and it encloses the ovary completely. Okay, and it gets fused with it. The other parts of the flower will arise above the ovary. Then in this case it is called as epigynous flower, and in epigynous flower, ovary is said to be inferior. Example is guava, cucumber, ray florets of sunflower. You can see the pictures here. Okay, the picture A, B, C, D. So A is nothing but here hypogynous, B and C are nothing but perigynous, and the last one D is nothing but the epigynous flower. Let us come to the parts of the flower. Calyx. Okay, calyx is said to be the outermost wall of the flower. Okay, and the members of the calyx are said to be sepals, which are generally green in color, leaf-like. The function is to protect the flower in the bud stage. Okay, depending upon the nature of the calyx, okay, it can be called as gamosepalous or polysepalous. Gamosepalous, we are very well aware of. When the sepals are united, it is said to be gamosepalous. When the sepals are free, it is said to be polysepalous. The next wall is corolla. The members are said to be petals here. Okay, and petals are usually beautifully brightly colored to attract the pollinators, as we all know. Okay, and similarly to the calyx, corolla also can be called as gamopetalous or polypetalous. If fused state, it is called as gamo, and free state it is said to be polypetalous. And one more thing here is the corolla can be tubular, bell shaped, funnel shaped, or even it can be wheel shaped. Let us come to the next part here, that is aestivation. So what is aestivation? The mode of arrangement of sepals or petals in the floral bud with respect to the other members of the same whorl is known as aestivation. Okay, and there are four main types of aestivation here. Okay, what are those four main types of aestivation? Velvet, twisted, imbricate, vexillary, or papilionaceous. Okay, so what is velvet aestivation? You can have a glance at the diagram also, students. Okay, so what is velvet aestivation? Velvet aestivation is nothing but when sepals or petals are in a whorl just touch one another. Okay, you can see the figure here. When they just touch one another, they are said to be at the velvet. When they touch another at the margin, they don't overlap, then this type of aestivation is called as velvet. Example in this category I have already given, that is calotropis. Okay, and the next one is nothing but the next one is twisted. When what is twisted aestivation? The twisted aestivation, if one margin of the appendage overlaps that of the next one, okay, then this is said to be twisted. Okay, and we have the next one, that is nothing but imbricate. What is this imbricate aestivation? What is imbricate aestivation? Imbricate aestivation, if the margins or petals overlap, but they overlap one another, but not in a particular direction. There is no proper direction, but they are overlapping one another, then it is said to be imbricate aestivation. And lastly, we have vexillary or papilionaceous. What happens in vexillary or papilionaceous is there are 5 petals. The largest one is called as standard, which will overlap the 2 lateral petals, which are called as wings. Okay, which in turn will overlap the 2 smaller anterior petals, which are called as keel. Okay, and this type of aestivation is said to be papilionaceous aestivation. Example I have already given, pea and bean flowers. Let us come to the next part, that is androecium. So what is this androecium? Androecium represents the male reproductive parts of the flowers, which are called as which consist of stamens. Okay, and each stamen represents the male reproductive organ. It consists of the stalk and a filament and an anther. Okay, and pollen grains are produced in the anther within the pollen sacs. Okay, and you should know that a sterile stamen is called as staminode. Okay, this is very important. Sterile stamen is referred to as staminode. Okay, the stamens of flowers may be united with other members such as petals, or they can even unite among themselves, students. Okay, when the stamens are attached with petals, the condition is said to be epipetalous, as you find in case of brinjal. Okay, when they are attached to the perianth, the condition is said to be epiphyllous, as in case of lily. Okay, and even stamens, as I said, the stamens may be free. Condition is referred to as polyandrous, or the stamens may be united into one bundle. The condition is said to be monoadelphous, as you find in case of China rose. Okay, when they are arranged in form of two bundles, then it is called as diadelphous, as you find in case of pea. When there are more than two bundles, the condition is referred to as polyadelphous, as you find in case of citrus. Okay, there may be even different variations, okay, with respect to the length of filament, okay, within a flower only. Okay, what did I say? Within a single flower only, there may be variation in the length of filament. The very good example under this category is salvia, because you know salvia is designed for a specific type of pollination. Okay, what you have studied in the some other chapter. Okay, a specific type of pollination mechanism exists, that is called as liver turnpike mechanism. Okay, so that is for salvia, where there is variation of length of filaments. Okay, and even mustard is also an example for that. Next is the gynoecium. The gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower, which consists of one or more carpels. Okay, and each carpel is made up of stigma, style, and ovary. Okay, three parts: stigma, style, and ovary. Ovary is the enlarged basal part on which the style will be placed. Okay, and the style is one that is connecting the ovary to the stigma, as we all know. The stigma is usually at the tip. Okay, and the main function of the stigma is to receive the pollen grains. Okay, when more than one carpel is present in a flower, it may be free. Condition is called as apocarpus, as you find in case of lotus. Okay, and rose. And if they are fused together, the condition is called as syncarpus, as you find in case of mustard and tomato. Okay, after fertilization, we all know that post fertilization events, after fertilization, the ovules will change into seeds and ovary will mature ultimately into fruit. Next, we have placentation and its types. So what is placentation, students? Arrangement of ovules within the ovary is known as placentation. Okay, and there are different types of placentation, which we can divide into different types, like marginal placentation, axile placentation, parietal, precentral, basal placentation. Respective examples are quoted here. Okay, so let us see the diagrammatic representation of different types of placentation here. Okay, so marginal placentation, the first diagram what you can see here is of marginal placentation. What is this marginal placentation? When the placenta forms a ridge along the ventral suture of the ovary, then the ovules will be born on this ridge, forming two rows. Okay, so you can see very clearly the placenta will be forming basically a ridge-like structure along the ventral suture. Okay, and the ovules will be born on this ridge. Such type of placentation is called as marginal placentation. Okay, then we have next one, that is nothing but the axile placentation. So what is axile? When the placenta is axial, okay, when the placenta is axial and the ovules are attached to it in a multilocular ovary. This is very important, multilocular ovary. Then that placentation is said to be axile. Okay, so you can give the example of hibiscus, China rose, tomato, lemon, etc. Okay, then the next diagram what you can see here is a parietal type placentation. So what is this parietal? What happens here is the ovules will be developing on the inner wall of the ovary. You can see the development of ovules on the inner wall of the ovary, or you can see on the peripheral part only. Usually the ovary is one chambered or single chambered here, students, but it appears to become two chambered due to the formation of false septum. That's called as replum. Okay, false septum, as you can see in case of mustard. Okay, Brassicaceae, mustard, and argemone also is an example. Okay, and the next type you can see is free central, wherein the ovules are born on the central axis. Okay, you can see clearly in the diagram, ovules born on central axis. Okay, and there is no septa here. Septum septa are absent. Example I have already said, primrose, etc. And last one we have, that is nothing but the basal type of placentation, wherein placenta will develop at the base of the ovary and a single ovule is attached to it. Okay, so these are the different types of placentation. I hope you have just recalled and refreshed yourselves. Let us move to the next part here, that is the fruit. Okay, so what is fruit? Ripened ovary is called as fruit, students. Okay, and this mature and ripened ovary developed after fertilization can be of different types. If a fruit is formed without fertilization, condition is called as parthenocarpy, and the fruit is called as parthenocarpic fruit. We are well aware about that. Fruit consists of seeds and pericarp. The thick and fleshy pericarp is three-layered and it can be divided into three parts, that is epicarp, mesocarp and endocarp. Okay, outer part is called epicarp, middle is mesocarp and the inner part is called as the endocarp. In mango and coconut, you can see the example here. In mango and coconut, the fruit is said to be drupe. Okay, and they develop from the monocarpillary superior ovaries. Okay, they develop from monocarpillary superior ovaries and they are single seeded, students. Okay, so this is about the fruit. And in certain examples, certain fruits, the mesocarp can be fibrous. Okay, the very good example is coconut here. In coconut, which is also said to be a drupe fruit, the mesocarp is fibrous, whereas in mango, the pericarp is differentiated into epicarp, fleshy, edible mesocarp, that you should remember, whereas the endocarp is stony and hard in nature. So this is the highlights about the fruit part. Similarly, let us see the seed at a glance. Okay, important points under this seed. So the seeds, okay, what are these seeds? Seeds are nothing but ovules after fertilization. We call them as seed. Okay, seed will have a seed coat and an embryo present in it, definitely. Okay, and we all know that embryo will have a radicle, an axis. Okay, one or two cotyledons depending upon monocot or dicot nature. If you talk about a dicot seed, a dicotyledonous seed is made up of a seed coat and an embryo. Embryo is made up of axis, radicle and two cotyledons. Okay, seed coat has two layers. Outer one is called testa and inner one is called as the tegmen. We have an important part that is also called as hilum there. Okay, so what is this hilum? You must remember, hilum is a scar through which seed is attached to the ovary. Seed is attached, it is a scar on the seed coat through which the developing seed will be attached to the fruit, okay, or to the ovary. Above the hilum, there will be a small pore that is called as micropyle. Okay, there is a hole that is called as micropyle. Okay, and even you should know that the cotyledons which are present in the seed, okay, description is not given, but you should know cotyledons can be fleshy and full of reserve material. Okay, that is very important. Seeds can be endospermic, seeds can be non-endospermic. You are aware of this particular phenomena, presence of endospermic and non-endospermic seeds. Okay, in castor, if you take the endosperm which is formed, is a food storing tissue. In certain plants like bean, gram and pea, the endosperm is not present. Why it is not present? Because it will be used up by the developing embryo. So in that regard, we have two types of seeds. Okay, moving ahead, coming to the monocot seed, structure of monocot seed. In monocot seed, the outer covering of the endosperm separates the embryo by a proteinaceous layer, and that layer is called as eleuron layer, which is very important part here, eleuron layer. Okay, and the embryo will be small. Okay, and it is situated in a groove at one end of the endosperm. Here you can see embryo will be situated here at one end particularly. Okay, and then it in monocot seed, it consists of one large and shield shaped cotyledon, and that is called as scutellum. Okay, and which bears a short axis which has plumule and radicle, and plumule and radicle are closed inside the sheets which are called as coleoptile and coleorhiza respectively. And the last part in this chapter is description of some important families. You have studied three important families. The first family is Fabaceae here, family Fabaceae. So under these families, you have studied vegetative characters, floral characters, as well as the economic importance. So vegetative characters, if you just recall for family Fabaceae students, okay, these are the trees, shrubs, and herbs. Roots will have root nodules generally, okay, and leaves will show alternate phyllotaxy. pinnately compound or simple leaves may be present there. Inflorescence usually will be racemose in case of Fabaceae. Flower will be zygomorphic and bisexual, and sepals will be 5. Gamosepalous condition will be there, and corolla will have polypetalous nature. Okay, papilionaceous type of this situation will be there. Okay, androecium will be 10. Okay, diadelphous condition, and anthus will be dithecous. Similarly, gynoecium you will find superior ovary nature here, monocarpillary nature, unilocular with many ovules. Okay, and fruit can be legume. Okay, and seed can have 1 to many non-endospermic seeds will be there. Okay, so economic importance wise, if you study, many plants which belong to this are like pulses like gram, arhar, etc. Okay, they can be used as source of edible oil like groundnut, soya bean. Okay, even as a dye, fibers, fodder, ornamental purpose, medicinal purpose, etc. Next, you have a family that is Solanaceae. In case of Solanaceae, you have studied that if you just recall the characters. Okay, solitary inflorescence or cymose inflorescence, as you see in case of Solanum. Flower is actinomorphic. In the Fabaceae, flower is zygomorphic. Here it is actinomorphic, bisexual. Calyx will be, sepals will be 5 in nature, united. Velvet estivation will be reported here. Corolla, petals will be 5 and velvet estivation. Androecium stamens 5 condition is epipetalous in case of Solanaceae. Okay, fruits can be berry or capsule. And if you come to economic importance, they are also very important economically because there is a source of food, spices like chili, etc., medicines like ashwagandha, fumigatory purpose also, and even for ornamentation purpose. Okay, and the last family what you have studied is the family Liliaceae here. If you just recall the floral characters, you can recall that cymose type of inflorescence will be there, solitary. Flower is again actinomorphic, similar to that of Solanaceae, bisexual. Perianth is present here. You have to remember, perianth condition is present here. Okay, and 6 3 plus 3 condition. Androecium stamens will be 6. Gynoecium tricarpillary, syncarpus, superior ovary in case of Liliaceae. Fruit can be capsule, rarely berry. Seeds are endospermous. Okay, and coming to economic importance, they are also used for ornamental purpose, medicinal purpose, as edibles, vegetables, and even for colchicine from the plant Colchicum autumnale. Okay, so this is about the chapter morphology of flowering plants. What we have seen at a glance. Now let us come to the next chapter, student, that is anatomy of flowering plants. Okay, so in anatomy of flowering plants, we have studied the different types of tissues. So if you just look at the classification of the plant tissue system, plant tissues are broadly divided into two major categories: meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Meristematic tissue further is divided into apical, lateral, and intercalary meristem. Permanent tissue is divided into simple and complex sclerenchyma. Okay, whereas further sclerenchyma is divided into fibers and sclerates. Complex tissue includes xylem and phloem with their respective elements. Okay, so this is the broad classification of plant tissues. Let us come to the different tissues at a glance. Okay, so now, what is tissue? You all know a group of cells which have common origin and function performing similar function are known as is called as tissue. Meristematic tissue is a simple tissue composed of group of similar and immature cells which are rapidly dividing and form new cells. Okay, the meristem which occurs, as I already said, there are three types of meristem: apical, lateral, and intercalary. Okay, so what is apical meristem? The meristem which occurs at the tips of roots and shoots are called as apical. The meristem which occurs between the mature tissues, especially in grasses, this is called as intercalary meristem. They occur in grasses, as I said, and they are responsible to regenerate parts which are removed by the grazing or herbivores or the browsing animals. This is very important. Okay, both apical and lateral and intercalary, both apical and intercalary meristems are primary meristems. Why they are primary meristems? Because they appear early in the life of a plant and help to form the primary plant body. This is very important. Meristem can also be divided into primary meristem and secondary meristem. Meristem that appears early in the life of a plant and helps to form the primary structure. Primary plant structure is said to be primary. Okay. Similarly, we have the secondary meristem. Okay, which is also the lateral meristem, students. What is this lateral meristem? Meristem which occurs on the sides and takes part in increasing girth of the plants are called as lateral meristem. And we have examples under this category: the intrafascicular cambium, the primary lateral, vascular cambium, cork cambium are the secondary lateral meristems. Okay, and these are the secondary or the lateral meristem. They are usually called as cylindrical meristems also. Okay, so and they are responsible for giving rise to secondary growth in the plant body. Okay, now let us come to the permanent tissues. So what are these permanent tissues? Permanent tissue, the cells of these tissues do not generally divide. Okay, generally do not divide. They are differentiated. Okay, they have all cell types similar in structure and designed to perform common function. These are called as permanent. Okay, and these permanent tissues basically are of different types. Parenchyma is one such type. Okay, they are divided into simple and complex. Under simple, we have parenchyma as the simplest example. So parenchyma is the simple tissue which is made up of central non-woody to softer parts of the plant. This is important. The main function is storage. They perform various functions. Main function is storage. They can even do photosynthesis. They can even do the process of secretion. So you can see the diagrams here for different types of tissue. This is the parenchyma. This is the diagram what you are seeing here. This is the parenchyma diagram. Okay, so they may show the presence of intercellular spaces. Okay, the cells can have intercellular spaces here. They may show it. Okay, and the cells are isodiametric in nature, spherical or oval, polygonal shape. Okay, similarly you can see the diagram of parenchyma tissue here. You can see, I'll just zoom it. Okay, so you can see the diagram of parenchyma. This is parenchyma. So what is this parenchyma? Parenchyma usually occurs in layers which are found usually below the epidermis. And this thickening is due to deposition of cellulose, hemicellulose, and pectin substances. Okay, and the cells can be oval in nature, spherical or polygonal. Their main function is they are usually having chloroplast. Okay, and they do not show presence of intercellular spaces, and as I said, they are usually having chloroplast, so they take up the function of photosynthesis. And another important thing is they provide mechanical support to the plant body, particularly in the young stages. So this is about the parenchyma. Next we have this sclerenchyma. In sclerenchyma we have two types, that is called as fiber and sclerosis. You can see the diagram, fiber and sclerosis. So what is this sclerenchyma? Sclerenchyma consists of narrow thick walled cells, and the cell walls show deposition of lignin. Okay, and they may also show presence of large number of pits, and these are the dead cells, as we all know, because they are without protoplast, and they are divided into two types on the basis of variation in form, structure, or even the nature of development. They are into two types, fibers and sclerites. So what is fiber? You can see here, fibers are thick walled elongated structures, pointed cells. Generally they will be occurring in form of clusters. Okay, in various plant regions. Similarly, we have sclerites, which are spherical in nature, oval or cylindrical. They also have thickened dead cells. Okay, and they have very narrow lumen. Cavities are very narrow in case of sclerites. Okay, and they are found in case of fruit walls of nuts, pulps of fruits like guava, pear, sapota, etc., etc. So this is about the three types of tissues we have seen. Similar diagrams are there. That is parenchyma, parenchyma, and sclerenchyma. The details I have already given about these types of cells. Now we'll come to the next type, that is the complex tissue, that is xylem and phloem. Xylem, basically, what is this? Why they are called complex tissue? First of all, they are made up of more than one type of cells, and they are called as complex tissues. Xylem, basically, which is functioning as a water conducting tissue, it also conducts minerals from roots to the stems and finally to the leaves also, and it also provides mechanical strength to the plant parts. Okay, and xylem basically is having different components. Okay, what are the different components? It is made up of vessels, tracheids, fibers, and parenchyma. Okay, so this is very important. Four components are there: vessels, tracheids, fibers, and xylem, parenchyma. Okay, and here important thing to be remembered here is gymnosperms, the plants belonging to the group gymnosperm, they lack vessels. This is very important. That means vessels are absent in gymnosperm. They are property of only angiosperms. Okay, that is again very important. Okay, and you can see the different diagrams here: vessels, tracheids. Okay, so what is vessel? Basically, it's a long cylindrical tube-like structure here. You can see long tube-like structure. Okay, made up of many cells, and each cell is called as vessel member here, which is having lignified wall. These are the dead elements. Okay, children, out of 4 elements, only xylem parenchyma is the living component. Remaining all are the dead elements here in case of xylem. Okay, and the vessels is a characteristic feature of angiosperms, as I said. Parenchyma cells are living cells, thin walled cells, and their cell walls are made up of cellulose. In remaining, the cell walls are made up of what? Lignin. Okay. So this is about the xylem. Similarly, we have the next tissue, that is phloem. Phloem is one which conducts organic food here, and phloem is usually situated out towards the outer side, and xylem is situated towards the inner side. Okay, and phloem is made up of 4 components, as we all know. What are the 4 components? The 4 components are sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fibers. Okay, and here one more thing to be stressed is gymnosperms have albuminous cells and sieve cells. Okay, they lack sieve tubes and companion cell. This is important. Gymnosperms do not have sieve tubes and companion cell. They're a property of only angiosperms. Okay, and out of these 4, you have to understand that phloem fibers are the dead elements. The remaining all elements are the living elements. One more thing here: phloem parenchyma is absent in case of monocots. This is again important point. Phloem parenchyma is absent in case of monocots. And one more thing here is phloem primary xylem is of 2 types. First formed xylem is called protoxylem, later formed is called metaxylem. Similarly, we have protophlloem and protophloem. Depending upon the arrangement, the protoxylem, when it is in the center, the condition is called as endark. When it is at the periphery, the condition is called as exarch. This is important with respect to xylem. Okay. Now we will come to the tissue systems. In tissue systems, the plant tissue system are broadly divided into 3 types, students: epidermal tissue system, ground tissue system, and the vascular tissue system. So epidermal tissue system is the outermost covering of the whole plant body, which consists of epidermal cells, stomata, epidermal appendages, etc. Okay, epidermal cells will be there. Okay, stomata, and another one will be the epidermal appendages. So epidermal cells, what is this epidermal cell? Epidermis is formed of this, and it is made up of elongated, compactly arranged single layer structure. Parenchymatous cells will be there, and which are usually forming a continuous layer. Okay, and these cells are basically having a waxy thick layer cuticle to prevent the water loss, and the cells also will show the presence of a large vacuole. Okay, so and coming to the next thing, that is the stomata. Stomata, what is stomata? We are well aware of. These are the structures present in the epidermis. They regulate the process of transpiration and gaseous exchange, and each stomata is surrounded or composed of 2 bean-shaped cells that are called as guard cells. Okay, and this enclose the stomatal pore. Okay, and you should also know that in dicots, the guard cells are bean-shaped cells. In monocots, the guard cells are dumbbell-shaped cells. Okay, and guard cells are chloroplast-containing cells. They help in the closing and opening of the stomata depending upon their turgidity, and they're also surrounded by the subsidiary cells. Okay, and the entire structure, which includes stomatal aperture, guard cells, and surrounding subsidiary cells, is called as stomatal apparatus. Epidermis also consists of number of hairs. As I said you, epidermal appendages, which fall under this, hairs fall under this, and there can be root hairs which are unicellular, and there can be stem hairs which are called trichomes, which are usually multicellular. They can be branched or even unbranched. Okay, they can be even soft or stiff, and their main function of trichomes is preventing water loss due to transpiration. The main function of root hair is absorption. Now the next tissue system is the ground tissue system. What is ground tissue system? All the tissues except epidermis and vascular bundles constitute the ground tissue. Okay, what does it consist of? It consists of simple tissue, permanent tissue, parenchyma is present, okay, pericycle, cortex, pith, okay, and medullary rays, all are included under the ground tissue system. Okay, so and in leaf, if you specifically talk about, the ground tissue is consisting of special cells which are called as mesophyll cells. In leaves, mesophyll, which are the chloroplast containing cells, will constitute the ground tissue system. Then we have the vascular tissue system. The vascular tissue system, as the name itself indicates, consists of xylem and phloem, okay, which together form the vascular bundles. When these arrange, depending upon the arrangement, students, we have different terminologies like radial, conjoint, okay, closed, open type of vascular bundles, etc. So what is the meaning of this? Okay, what is the meaning of radial arrangement? You can see the diagram here. I'll just, yeah, this is the diagram in which the first A, you can see this is the radial arrangement of vascular bundle. What is the meaning of radial? When xylem and phloem within the bundle are arranged in an alternate manner on different radii. When you see them on different radii, this is called radial arrangement. Okay, when in xylem and phloem are situated in the same radii, then it is called as what? It is called as conjoint type of arrangement. And this conjoint type of arrangement can be closed or it can be open. If cambium is present, it is said to be an open bundle. If cambium is absent, it is said to be a closed bundle. Similarly, you have one more diagram which is depicting here. This is the radial arrangement. Okay, this is the radial arrangement on different radii. This is the conjoint arrangement. So conjoint can be further divided. Important things I would like to mention here. In dicot root, you can see the outermost layer is called as epidermis. Okay, the cortex consists of several layers of parenchymatous cells here. The condition is said to be, basically the condition in root is said to be exarch condition. Okay, what is exarch? Already I have told you. Casparian strips are present. Okay, and these Casparian strips are very important because they are acting as checkpoints. Okay, and then next to the Casparian strips, we have pericycle. Okay, and four rows you can see here. So even you can, four rows of vascular bundle can see here, proto-exarch condition. This is also called as tetrarch condition. And innermost region, what you can see, all the tissues which are inner side on the endodermis, which includes pericycle, vascular bundles, and pith, these together are called as stem. Okay, and now we have the monocot root system, TS of monocot. You can see the diagram. In TS of monocot, anatomy is similar only, students. It also has epidermis, cortex, endodermis, pericycle, etc. The main difference is more in number, more than 6. So condition here is called as polyarch condition. Okay, and pith is large and well developed as compared to the dicotyledonous roots. Okay, and these monocots do not show any secondary growth. Similarly, we have dicot stem. Okay, dicot stem and monocot stem. In dicot stem, if you see, outermost layer is epidermis. Important points to be highlighted: presence of hypodermis. Okay, the outer zone is called as hypodermis, which is consisting of few layers of parenchymatous cells, which is very important here. Parenchyma is present, which constitutes the hypodermis, and this is responsible to provide mechanical strength, particularly in the young stage. Okay, and cortical layers below this hypodermis consist of some parenchymatous cells. Okay, and this innermost layer is called again endodermis. Okay, and endodermal cells are rich in starch, and there's a presence of starch sheath, which is very important. Presence of starch sheath. Okay, and pericycle is present next to it, next to the endodermis, and usually located above the phloem here. Okay, in the form of semi-lunar patches. This is important here with respect to dicot stem. I am telling with with respect to dicot stem, there is presence of semilunar patches of sclerenchyma, which is very important. And there is presence of medullary rays. Where are these medullary rays present here? Medullary rays are present in between the vascular bundles. There are few layers of parenchymatous cells which will ultimately constitute the medullary rays. Large number of vascular bundles are present in the form of a ring. Okay, and the condition in this case is said to be, if you see the arrangement of proto and metaxylem, protoxylem is inside, metaxylem is outside, so the condition is said to be endark. In both the stems, the condition is said to be endark, monocot and dicot stems. Okay, so in monocot stem also you can see the one difference I would like to highlight: phloem parenchyma is not there. Okay, and presence of water containing cavities. This is very important, you must remember. Phloem parenchyma is not there, and there is presence of water containing cavities which are present within the vascular bundles. Okay, monocot leaf also called ventral leaf. Okay, and why it is called as dorsiventral leaf? Because you can see the arrangement of stomata is different here. Dicot leaves usually possess large number of stomata on the lower side and less number of stomata on the upper side. That is, abaxial epidermis will have more number of stomata than the adaxial epidermis. Okay, sometimes even stomata may be are differentiated into two types: palisade parenchyma and spongy parenchyma. Okay, and the adaxially placed palisade parenchyma is made up of long, elongated, cylindrical like cells. Okay, and the oval cells are the spongy parenchyma. Okay, there are presence of vascular bundles will be there, midrib will be there. Okay, size of vascular bundles will depend upon the size of veins. Okay, and vascular bundles are surrounded by bundle sheath cells, which is very important. Vascular bundles will have will be surrounded by thick walled bundle sheath cells. Okay, so this is the thing about the dorsiventral leaf. Now isobilateral leaf, stomata are present on both these surfaces. Okay, equally. Mesophyll is not differentiated. This is very important. Mesophyll is not differentiated, and some adaxial epidermal cells will be modified to form specialized cells which are called as buliform cells. The function, what is the significance is of these cells is, these buliform cells absorb water, they become turgid. So the leaf surface is exposed, and when there is water stress, these cells become flaccid, the leaves will curve inwards, and hence water loss is minimized. This is a very important thing you must remember about the monocot leaf. Okay, now quickly we'll come to the secondary growth. So what is secondary growth? Secondary growth is basically the growth of roots and stems in a length usually will be, if you talk with respect to length, it is due to apical meristem. But when growth occurs with respect to increase in girth, that type of increase is called as secondary growth. Okay, and the various tissues which are involved in secondary growth are vascular cambium and cork cambium. Vascular cambium, in case of young stem, vascular cambium is present in patches as a single layer between the xylem and phloem, which forms a complete ring at the later stage. Okay, and this cambial ring will show its activity. What is the activity? The ring will become active and begins to cut off new cells both towards the inner and outer sides. The cells which are cut off towards the pith will mature into secondary xylem, and those which cut off towards the periphery will mature into secondary phloem. Important thing here is the cambium is more active on the inner side than the outer side, and due to which the amount of secondary xylem will be more as compared to the secondary phloem. Primary and secondary phloem get gradually crushed due to continued formation and accumulation of secondary xylem. And at certain places, cambium forms a narrow band of parenchyma which passes through the secondary xylem and secondary phloem in the radial direction. Then these are called as secondary medullary rays. You can see the diagram here of the secondary growth here, particularly in dicot stem here. First is you have to remember the vascular cambium, formation of the cambial ring here. Okay, and the cambial ring, how it is formed? It is formed by the activity of interfascicular and intrafascicular cambium. Both together constitute and intra, both together constitute the cambial ring, and then it starts Madam,
Yeah, madam. Madam, shall I stop?
Another 5 minutes, ma'am. I'll complete this chapter.
Okay. Oh.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, so I was, madam. Okay, so students, I was talking about this activity of the cambial ring. Now, you also have studied the formation of spring wood and autumn wood in this chapter. Okay, so how this formation occurs? Cambium is very active during the spring season, but less active during the winters. And during spring, a large number of xylem elements are formed, having wider vessels. Okay, and during winter, less xylem elements are formed, having narrower vessels. The wood which is formed during summer is called as spring wood. Okay, during this season is called spring wood, and in winter the cambium is less active, and then the wood this is formed during this season is called as autumn wood. Okay, these two kinds of wood appear as alternate concentric rings in transverse section of a tree, and these are called as annual rings. Now we have heartwood and sapwood. So what is this heartwood and sapwood? In old trees, the greater part of secondary xylem is dark brown in color, hard and resistant to attacks by microbes and insects. This region is made up of dead elements, students, which are having highly lignified walls. This wood is called as heartwood. Okay, the heartwood gives mechanical support, but it does not conduct any water. Whereas the peripheral part of the secondary xylem is lightly colored, this is known as sapwood, and this is responsible for the conduction of water and minerals. Now coming to the cork cambium, what is this cork cambium? A meristematic tissue which develops in the cortex region is called as cork cambium or phellogen. And this phellogen cut off cells on both sides. Outer cells differentiate to form cork or phellum, while the inner differentiates to form secondary cortex or phelloderm. Okay, so phellogen, phellum and phelloderm together are called as periderm. This is very important. Together they are called as periderm. We have a thing that is called as lenticels here. So what are these lenticels, students? Lenticels. At certain regions, the phellogen will cut off cells which are closely arranged parenchymatous cells on the outer side. And these cells will ultimately rupture the epidermis and they form a lens-shaped structure. What you can see in the diagram, they form a lens-shaped openings which are called as lenticels. And these lenticels permit the exchange of gases between the outer atmosphere and the internal tissue of the stem. Okay, as we have seen secondary growth in stems, there will also be a secondary growth in dicot roots, okay, wherein the vascular cambium is completely secondary in origin and it originates from the tissue which is located just below the phloem, okay, a portion of the pericycle tissue above the protoxylem and forming a complete and continuous wavy ring. There will be a formation of wavy ring, okay, and this wavy ring later will become circular and remaining events will be similar to the secondary growth in stem. Okay. Madam, we can stop.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.